My name is Sean Cleary. The panel will introduce itself in a moment. A couple of housekeeping items. Hopefully everyone went to the bathroom before you came in. If not, you're going to walk past a whole lot of people to get to it. Bathrooms, I'm sure you know where they are. At the end of it, you'll want your passport stamp. Miriam Gallant will be down at the back. You'll all go out that way to get your passport stamp, to get the activity, and get the point for the activity. That's pretty much it. I'm not going to introduce the panel because I don't want to be redundant. I'm going to get them to introduce themselves, and we'll keep things moving as quickly as we can. We've got a lot of questions and a lot of smart folks here who have a lot of great things to say. So the very first question is just briefly, give us your name, tell us who your organization is, and just quickly talk about what you do. I'll start here.
My name is Stephanie Gerard, and I am the HR manager here at the Mount. And I do everything from employee relations to labor relations, health and wellness, and some recruitment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Leanne Dingwall, and I work for a company called Maple Wave. It's a local company here in the tech sector. I'm the VP of Human Resources and Communications for the global, all the global offices. And I focus on everything that HR involves, so employee relations to talent acquisition to benefits, payroll, you name it.
Hi, my name is Trevor Poole. I work for Bell. I've been there for just over 20 years now. I currently have management for our operations and also security teams, and that scope goes across Atlantic Canada and stretches into Ontario as well. That scope also includes a lot of HR functions, which include onboarding processes, new graduate programs, interns, and the like. So I'll be glad to speak to a lot of people today. Thanks.
Hi, my name is JP Gerard. I'm Senior Vice President with a company called Morneau Chappelle. Our business is basically working in human resources consulting specifically. I manage a team that looks over our clients and takes care of their benefits and pension plans. I have employees all the way from Halifax to Vancouver, and I've been there about just over 13 years.
Hi there. My name is Jerry Walsh. I'm the owner and the founder of an executive search firm called Gerald Walsh Associates. We've been recruiting for about 25 years or so. So we would be known as, sometimes some of you may be familiar with the term headhunter, recruiter, placement firm. Executive search is what we use. So we would recruit typically the most senior person, like a chief administrative officer, a CEO, an executive director, for organizations like not-for-profits, associations, municipalities, public sector agencies, entities like that.
Thank you. And actually, Jerry donated very kindly a few of his new books, Pinnacle, which this would be encouraging for our students. I'm going to just use my own discretion. The students that I think give or ask the best questions to our panelists, I'll be giving you one of Jerry's new books. All right. I'm going to come now back this way, starting with Jerry, coming back to Stephanie. So if you could just briefly talk about what your education is and how that, and I'm sure it's a circuitous route, how that has led you to kind of where you are now.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. The the word circuitous is really important because a lot of people believe you start a career in a certain discipline and you kind of grow your career in a very linear path. But most paths are very meandering. People do different things. So, for example, I did my MBA at Dalhousie in marketing because I thought it sounded kind of interesting. Literally, that was the only reason why I took marketing. Landed my first job with a small organization and about a $2 million owner-managed business, and the owner of the business, his controller, had a heart attack, and he said, and so she was going to be off for many months, and he said to me, well, you have your MBA, you're now my controller, and honestly, you have management accounting and financial accounting, you take one course in each, and I didn't know anything, about debits and credits, so I enrolled in the CMA program. So I'm actually a CPA by training. Did work in commercial lending with Bank of Montreal for a number of years, but I'd always had this desire to run my own business, and literally this opportunity presented itself with some other partners a number of years ago to set up an executive search firm, which I knew nothing about that industry, but I thought that would look like fun. It's human resources, and eventually found my passion, if you will, in doing that. So it's I think my own path, and I'm sure many others at the table here, the path goes in a very non-linear way or circuitous way, as Sean mentioned.
I am a graduate of Mount St. Vincent in 1999. I did a BBA here, and I was going to be either an accountant or a lawyer once I was done that, and I kind of went in an opposite direction. I've basically more focused, kind of tripped and fell into the human resources world. I didn't know what it was, but I took the first job I could out of school. It was with a hotel, so I liked the tourism, I liked the HR side of it, and just kind of grew from there. Did a designation in employee benefits and some other certifications along the way. But much like Jerry said, like, you think you have a path, you take some risks, you take some chances, you take a couple of leaps of faith every once in a while, and next thing you know, literally 20 years later, you're sitting in front of a group of you guys. Fast forward, trying to explain what you do, which is can be a bit of a challenge. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what Jerry had to say.
As I previously mentioned, I've been with Bell for about 20 years now, and I had the same sort of process. And I've had 12 different jobs within Bell over that time period, which include business analyst, customer service manager, operations manager, security manager. I've had a lot of different components in there. But what I do is I keep trying to add to what I'm trying to move to. So every time I pick up a new role, I look for the opportunity in that role. In order to move up to the more senior positions, you need to build up your portfolio. So being myopic in one area sometimes isn't the best. They're looking for a diverse set of skill sets. So working within the business analyst role definitely gave me a lot of tactical abilities. And then as I moved up through the organization and through formal education as well, I'll talk about that in a minute, you'll build up your strategy abilities. So my formal education, I initially graduated here from the Mount with a BA-IT, which is an IT-based degree. Then I moved on, completed a Master's Electronic Commerce. Halfway through, and I'm currently enrolled to finish off an MBA in leadership, and actually have most of Bachelor Science in Biochem completed. So there's a lot of critical thinking abilities in there, which is necessary to help move things forward. And you're probably wondering why the biology component's in there. It seems like an unusual path, but if you look at the way our technology is currently evolving today with the biometrics that are built in, phones are a good example of what you're using. You look at the smart technologies that are built in your home, having understand that technology is very valuable. Thank you.
I am a graduate of St. Mary's University, a rival of here, and I did graduate with an HR background, and I thought for sure that's what I was going to go into, but graduation got closer and closer. I wanted a job, I wanted to make my own money, and I wanted to have a lot of fun. So I took the first job that I could get, which was in Ottawa, and it happened to be within the political sphere of things, and it was focused on Atlantic Canada. It really helped me with my relationship skills, communication, hence the communications background that I have, and I grew through that. I moved on and worked in the nonprofit sector for a while at a high level, which I loved in Ontario. And at the same time, I went back into my master's with a focus in human resource management. And I kept coming back to that, and it was the people function and how that was a key factor in everything that I did, and it's such a key factor in businesses today. And made my way back here, and that was the path. That's what I set out to do. I did a bit of a shift overall, and it wasn't easy. But as Jerry said, I thought I was going to go here, and I went here, and then I went over here. If I look back, and everything had a people component to it. So yeah, that's how I got to where I'm at today.
Well, I started off in marketing because I had finished a marketing degree from the Mount, and I had a brother who was working at the casino in HR, who's sitting right there, and he he may have helped me out to get a marketing job at the casino, so that's where I started. And lo and behold, years later, we're on the same panel together, which is really kind of funny. Because I wanted to go the marketing route. I went sales, was into sales for a while, got into recruitment, and now I've come full circle into HR, where it's very interesting, but it's different from where I started and thought I would end up in my career. So it's yeah. Thank you.
I hope you noticed some similarities, though. I was interested, though, with Trevor, though. You said you've been at Bell for 20 years. So although you probably changed positions and moved around quite a bit, it's, I don't want to say unusual, but it's certainly not typical today. And Jerry would attest to this in the kind of work he does, where you would have one person have that kind of trajectory. I'm sure there were some sideways moves too, but that trajectory at one organization,
Yep.
albeit a very large organization.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. So Bell currently employs over 50,000 people in Canada. So I think the numbers are somewhere around 1 in 400 that are employable or either connected to a subsidiary or a Bell employees. So the numbers are quite significant in Canada. The positions, we have physicians and nurses on staff. We have people that work in media, help manage some of the teams that Bell currently has today. We have security officers, just about anything you can imagine, you can find that role.
Yeah. You're kind of leading into my third question. Maybe I'll start with you, but before I do, I just want to make a couple of comments. I think it was actually Leanne mentioned SMU being a rival of the Mount. We're just friends. I went to SMU. I did a class here. I teach here. And in the old days, this was an all-girls school, and SMU was an all-boys school. The guys used to come up here for dances. So, you know, we get along. No, but as Jerry would know, I was the director of alumni affairs at St. Mary's University for 3 years, and so I met a lot of those old guys. I was around that long. So I'm going to start actually back with Trevor on the third. Oh, actually, one more comment. HR is about people. And it's understanding people, understanding communications, understanding relationships. And I know people, one who was going to be on the panel, but she couldn't make it today, from Amira. And, you know, she has a sociology background. I know people with psychology backgrounds, accounting and finance backgrounds, and a lot of medium-sized, small and medium-sized organizations often will combine that finance, admin, HR into one person. And usually it's 1 or 2 person shop in a medium-sized company. It's usually not that big. So you come at HR and management in general with a broad background. I forget who it was. Someone said you can't have the blinders on, you can't be myopic. Most people in HR have to kind of know a little bit about everything to know what they're doing. So that third question is about the jobs. And we have people from small business here. We have people from very large businesses here. So I'll start with Trevor. Can you tell us about the types of jobs, you mentioned a few already, that students might consider with your company? What are kind of those titles, positions, roles? Are there any entry-level kind of jobs that some of these people this year, next year, the year after might be thinking about applying with Bell?
Absolutely. Bell has a graduate leadership program that is currently running right now. So in August, you're able to put your application in, and then between October to December, you can apply. You'll go through the interview process, and then you'll start a new job. But we also have an internship component as well. So they're across the fields of field services, finance, Bell Business Markets, human resources, business intelligence, network, information technology, across all fields. And that includes roles as software developers. It includes positions within recruitment as well. I just recently hired a software developer. She's starting on, I think, January 6th. So, but when I have a look at the scope that's in there, it's across all those fields. And I notice with human resources specifically, there's a lot of human resources consultants today. Before, if I went back and looked about a decade ago, I noticed we had a lot of internal human resource elements in there. But now, with employees moving in and out of organizations so quickly, I do notice a lot of consulting in there today. So when I go into meetings and I have a look at people's interviews, I notice probably 50-60% of the time it's completed by a consultant, and that consultant has a particular set of expertise. So for instance, somebody might be really good at interviewing, while another person maybe look at education. And that's one thing that's important when you come on board, is look for what the organization can offer for you. So your salary is one part of it, but also look to see what else they can offer. So there's internal training programs. Make sure you take advantage of them, because there's just within my department alone, there's a little over $1 million I can spend on upgrading people's education. It can be formal education, things that are done internally, but there are a lot of elements.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to come back this way a little bit with Leanne, because you work at Maple Wave. So what kind of jobs for students are there?
Well, we're a local tech company, and our primary focus is software developers. But we have a range of everything. We are a global operation. We have an office in South Africa and the UK, so we do do a number of different things. So anything from customer support, customer success, finance and admin. We are a small HR team. We don't have finance and HR fully attached. It is separate because, back to your point, HR does have to wear multiple hats. And in a small growing business that their primary focus of their product and services isn't in this market, our talent really matters because we have to have an understanding of a number of different cultures and ways that other businesses are doing things. So there's lots of different jobs. And I guess the one thing that you should think of, and I think everyone on this panel had noted, our paths didn't necessarily set out the way that we said, wake up the next morning and I'm going to have a job with X. It's about looking for the opportunity that is aligned with your skill sets, and also a company that aligns with your values. And I'm sure others will mention this, but values are very important, and you will find you will excel and have a growing, thriving career of 20 years in an organization, if that is your chosen path, if you find an organization that is going to provide that opportunity. So I'm really happy that I listened to my father when he was in my ear. You know, it's not going to be your dream job tomorrow, but get the experience, align yourself, figure out what it is you're good at and what you like. So yeah, I think that's really important to keep in the back of your head when you're looking at the different types of jobs.
Thank you. I'll do a quick here for Stephanie about jobs at the Mount for students when they're still students and then after they graduate, because there's some opportunities here, by the way.
Yeah, so the lucky thing is that you guys are always connected with the Mount anyway, online and on our website, so it's a good idea to always keep an eye on what's available. But really when you're looking for, and most of the jobs will say student, like it's oriented for a student to apply. And after graduation, or when you're getting closer to graduation, you want to be looking for positions anywhere from clerk, assistant, coordinator, but really keeping an eye on the amount of years of experience that they're looking for, because if it says 1 to 2, odds are it's an entry-level position, and they'd be looking for somebody who maybe have just graduated, or if it's a harder to fill position, they may take the leap of going with not so much experience, but with the educational background that you guys would have to offer at that point.
For the student jobs, would they find those on the Mount website or in?
They should, yeah. It's a little separate from HR because it depends on the department. It depends on the if the faculty and that sort of thing that's needing the position. So it is important to keep your ear open and keep your eye on the websites.
Yeah. Lots of student opportunities here as well for all kinds of stuff, projects that professors and researchers are doing and all that kind of stuff. Please.
The one thing I didn't mention, we've recently, because we've had a significant amount of growth, have really tapped into some of the programs that the government's offering in terms of graduate to opportunity program. So we don't have a formal graduate to leadership program because we're still small, but those types of programs, knowing what they are and how you can fit within those programs within organizations can also be very helpful. For small and medium-sized enterprises, I'm sure Jerry can speak to this. Not everyone knows about those programs in that small to medium-sized enterprise. So if you also can provide that insight, that's helpful. And coupling on, I'm sure a lot of you do a co-op, utilizing your co-op experience and staying in touch with the company. Use that experience. As she mentioned, 1 to 2 years, that is entry level, but there's some people that would also take your co-op in as maybe an opportunity to get you in the door. So I just want to highlight that.
Thanks, Leanne. Maybe I'll jump to Jerry then, because I know you have taken on a partner recently, and I don't know if you've grown the business or not, but certainly you can also speak to the kind of clients that you guys get in terms of what they're looking for.
Yeah, before I answer that, I just want to pick up on one of the points you made. I always like disagreeing with you, Sean. The comment, so sometimes in organizations, as Sean mentioned, you see finance administration run together. So my view is that's a big red flag. If you see an organization that has a VP finance and administration, and HR is tucked under that, probably like 99 times out of 100, that VP is an accountant, okay, and not a human resource person, virtually guaranteed. So the more progressive organizations will have HR sort of reporting directly to the CEO and not up through some accountant. And I'm an accountant, I can say that, so you can get away with it. Our firm is quite small, so the number of opportunities in our firm would be limited. But I just want to maybe briefly speak about what recruiting firms do in general, because that may be beneficial to you. Recruiting firms work for employers. They're hired by employers to find people for key positions. So I think it would be very beneficial for you. Like in our case, we recruit for fairly senior positions, but there would be a lot of firms, recruiting firms, that would recruit for entry level or more junior positions. So I think it's really important for you to try to establish a contact with them, get the list of the firms in town, take a look through the website, see what types of jobs they actually recruit for, and make an attempt to meet with one of the recruiters there. Probably you won't get the meeting, but if you do it well and diplomatically, you might get a face-to-face meeting. But at a minimum, they will always accept your resume to put it on a database that you're notified of opportunities that might arise. So you find jobs really through your own networking, through applying to jobs that are on Career Beacon, which is kind of a waste of time, or referrals, or recruiting firms. Those are your 4 channels of finding jobs.
And I don't think we disagree about your analysis of those organizations. I just never had a chance to say that I would go in a different direction. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations still do combine those. And I'm on the board of one of them. JP, if you could just tell us, because Morneau Chappelle is a large organization, I think probably, except for maybe what we see in the news about finance minister, most of us don't know what Morneau Chappelle does.
Yeah, so we have a lot to say. I can give you a bunch of job titles, but they're not going to mean anything to you. So if you're actually very interested in seeing what we have to offer, I do suggest you go to our website. Our firm basically helps other companies manage functions of human resources, whether it's their benefits administration, pension admin, their EAP, their disability management program. Those are all things we're just basically an outsourcer at different levels. You can do full outsource, co-source, just use our systems as a software. But many, many opportunities. We got about 6,000 employees now. About 30% are now in the U.S. We're all across the country. But for those of you looking for jobs, so if there's something that interests you, like I'm telling you, you can email me and I can get back to you. You can get my email address. But when you're looking for a job, we know you don't have any experience. And when I'm looking at somebody who's new, I'm not going to expect them to have 2 to 3 years. So don't let that deter you. It's kind of like a bullet that you have to put in there, maybe ideal. Who does tourism here? Who's in the tourism program? Here? Yeah. If you're in the tourism program, you need to hype that up. Because I don't actually care if somebody has straight A's, has 2 MBAs, and a sociology degree. I want to know that the person has customer service experience that can be trainable. You're here in whatever year you're in and you're going to graduate. I already know that you're trainable. I know you know nothing about our DB Ariel platform. That's okay. You don't need to figure that out. What I'm saying to you, hype up the customer service, because if you get into HR or some other management function, your customers turn around. They're now your internal people, your employees. So when I'm hiring somebody, again, especially out of school, yeah, some experience, fine. But if they've gone through the tourism program and know about customer service, I didn't go through the tourism program, but worked in hotels. That is a catalyst to my success, is being able to just serve, just to acknowledge. Somebody mentioned follow-up. If you go for an interview, follow up. Don't text it. Even email it is fine. Just don't text the follow-up, the thank you, do it. That gets like 2 extra points in my head. If there's a tie and you're just as good as somebody else, these little things will get you ahead. So kind of deviated from the question, yeah, we have a bunch of cool jobs. We're very virtual. I personally don't give a crap where anybody sits. If you have like the internet and can do a good job, then great. But just I would really focus on your ability to connect with other humans.
Thank you. I'm going to start this one with Jerry. Question 4 is around the resume, getting it past that front door. What are the things that you look for on the paper? And particularly, so a lot of companies now, they force you to go to a website. There's a platform. You have to submit a cover letter. A resume could be combined, could be separate. What are the things? Well, actually, it's not in the question, but for your organizations, how do you get the input? So where does it come from? Is it paper? Is it online? And do you have computer algorithms that run through them, look for the keywords, key phrases, or does a human look at them? But more importantly, what's got to be on the resume? How do they get their foot in the door?
Yeah, it's interesting. You have several points there, Sean. I mean, we in our case, resumes are sent electronically through an email, so they're attachments. Like there's no online system where you have to kind of cut and paste, which is very painful. And honestly, it's not. I don't know why people even use them, but a resume. Like I've interviewed over about 20,000 people, so I don't know how many resumes that means I would have read. Probably multiple hundreds of thousands now that I think about it. But it's amazing how bad a job people do on resumes. And I always liken it to reading, when you're reading like one of your textbooks, for example, like nobody reads every single word, all right? You kind of skim a little bit. You look for some headings, you may, look for some bullets and so on. And it's like a speed reading exercise. And most employers actually do, when they read a resume, do a speed reading exercise. They're skimming resumes. They're not spending 2 or 3 or 5 minutes. They're spending about 20 or 30 seconds. So they're trying to forming an impression. So be very conscious of that. There's a whole chapter in the book on kind of formatting of resumes. But I think in the end people sweat the resumes too much. You got to have a good resume for sure. But if you're not getting interviews, and this happens to people at all stages of their careers, they worry about their resume being something wrong with their resume. It's usually not the resume. It's usually other activities. They're not doing networking or not making the contacts than the resume itself. But you've got to think of it as a document. If you're doing bullets, people read bullets downward. They'll stop after 2 or 3. So your most important ones have to be at the top. JP just raised a couple points about how you illustrate things, lots of white space. So those are the kind of things that you have to stand out in some fashion. And I really disagree with the use. There's a lot of resumes that come in now. They've got a lot of graphics built into them, and honestly, they're just very difficult to read. And because your eye goes back and forth, you got to read down the left-hand side.
Thank you. Actually, I'll come on this side with Stephanie in the Mount, because I know we have a website set up and we have a partner. Who's our partner for resumes? Is Career Beacon?
Career Beacon.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we do use Career Beacon. Having said that, we go through pretty much every resume that we get in for positions. So my advice for resume writing is I have to agree that they're not well done for the most part, but that's anywhere from brand new to very experienced people. They tend to sometimes downplay what experience they have, or just get a very confusing resume. But the important things for us would be to clearly match your experience and credentials to the responsibilities and requirements of the job. So putting a generic cover page out, we know when they're generic. Often you just know that you haven't really looked at the actual credentials of the job and the requirements. So that's really key, that you match those. Sometimes even using the same words. Don't even worry about, okay, I have to rephrase this a different way. We want to know that that's the experience you have. It takes the guesswork out of what we don't have to fill in the blanks and that sort of thing. I can't tell you how important it is to proofread your writing, your resumes. We get a lot of mistakes in them, and it just, when you say you have attention to detail, and then there's some spelling errors and errors in the cover letter, it kind of negates anything that you've just claimed. Don't lie on your resume, or don't downplay your experience. Play up your experience, especially like JP said, customer service is huge where you don't have a lot of other experience. But people do lie on the resumes, and you just don't. And if you've had a lot of contract work or internships, write on it that they're contract work or internships in brackets, because you don't want to get overlooked because you look like you've had a ton of jobs over the course of a very short period of time. So as soon as I see contract, internship, I say, okay, great, that's really good experience. It doesn't mean that they're not necessarily committed to any given organizations. So those would be my kind of 4 top things for you guys.
What about you, Leanne?
I mean, most of it's been said. I think the big thing is be honest. There's been so many times where we've, found out that people weren't necessarily honest. JP highlighted about making it known what your skill sets are, identifying cross-functional skills, and don't take anything for granted. So I often, we'll get resumes in, and we don't have a scanner. We we humanly view every single resume. We blind off the name, so there's no um, discrepancy there, but we review every single one. And I can't tell you how important it is to take your co-op experiences, your volunteer experience, and utilize that within your resume, because all of that is experience, and it gives you skills that you can demonstrate are cross-functional if you have them. And I mean, I think the proofreading is another really big, important thing. There's nothing worse than getting a resume and it having typos and spelling mistakes, or the font not matching. Like it's a respect thing, and it's showing that you care and you're interested and you want to be taken seriously. I think that's really, really important. But also in your resume, looking at how you can, I post a job, even if it's entry level or if it's intermediate or senior, how you can be a part of that solution. How is your experience going to, immediately address the problem or the role that I'm hiring for? Take the guesswork out, as you noted. It's really important because we scan them quickly. We hope we get the right batch on the left side, and it's a game sometimes. So take the time, take the effort, and put it in.
Trevor or JP, do you have anything to add to that?
I do have one thing. There's a lot of investment in artificial intelligence today, and one of the technologies Bell does currently have is AI. And we are using AI as an aggregate when we're looking for potential candidates. We are experimenting with that currently today. So make sure, and I heard it mentioned earlier, that your skill sets do align exactly with what's being asked for. Because as we move forward, technology is going to be a very prevalent component, and every time you submit a resume, make sure the higher you're trying to move in the organization, the more customization, and it's moving away from that template that's currently out there. I know you can go out and Google cover letter template, find it, fill it out, fill in the blanks, but that customization in that cover letter is everything when I'm reading down through it, and grammar can catch me every time. When I'm going down through, I might not see the next sentence because I get stuck because I'm not really sure what somebody means or what their context is. So I come across that a lot. Just a couple little things to get in that front door.
JP?
Just two things.
Yeah.
Just be pithy, keep it short. I don't need your full resume, but I don't need the whole story. The resumes that go to the top of the pile for me are the ones that get sent to me by people I know. So use your network. Get a LinkedIn account. Figure out who's connected to whom. And don't be shy in reaching out and asking. I met with somebody this morning. It's called an informational interview. I wouldn't have met with this guy in a million years, but the person that sent me the email and said, you should meet with this person. So he could we got an hour this morning, top of the list. So resumes, cover letters. I actually don't read cover letters. I'm just saying, I don't. It might be a bit controversial point, but I skip them because I look for the quick hits. And then those that I know that come from somebody else, they go to the top of the pile. So make sure you're really thinking about how you're going to network.
Can I just say, I read every cover letter. So just know, I know a lot of people don't. So, but you should err on the safe side and write. To me, there are two most underutilized tools in job search: is the thank you note and the cover letter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's interesting. When we think about a cover letter, it's a sales brochure for you as an employee. And imagine if you got a brochure in the mailbox and it was full of typos and it was ill formatted and you couldn't read it. You're not even going to put the effort in. Same thing is true when you're sending. I certainly haven't read as many cover letters as Jerry, but I've read my fair share in the last 20 odd years. And as soon as I see one that's full of mistakes or doesn't have the information on it up front that I'm looking for, it goes to the bottom of the pile. I don't throw it away, but it goes to the bottom of the pile. If I can't find anyone else, I'll revisit that bottom of the pile. But if I have to revisit the bottom of the pile, usually it means we've had a failed search. We try again. And honesty. I don't know. Do you guys remember 2012 Yahoo? I forget the CEO's last name, Scott something. He claimed on his resume when he got hired that he had a computer science degree. He made it all the way up to CEO. And I think he was only in the job for 5-6 months, and they found out that he lied on his resume. They had a zero tolerance policy in their code of conduct. They had to fire their CEO for lying on his resume.
Yeah. Same thing happened to the CEO of the IWK Hospital. Claimed he was a chartered accountant,
Yeah.
and he wasn't. Yeah.
So honesty is important in mistakes. Okay, so the next one, we'll do quick hits on question 5. What do you see as the key management skills needed to manage organizations today, given that the audience we have here is a lot of students, some with a variety of experiences, but mostly new. So what should they be working towards? What kind of management skills are there today? And what do you see in the next 3, 4, 5 years? I'll start with Stephanie on this side.
Really, for you guys, I think it's doing your job well to the best of your ability and how you manage working relationships. So treating all levels of the organization differently but equitably is the best advice. And good managers spend half their time leading people well. It takes time, patience to be, and have a good understanding of your own mandate. So, while not losing sight of how to motivate other people's strengths that they have.
Leanne?
Sorry. I would say, yeah, I mean, doing your job well. But the number one skills that I look for in a manager today and someone that's aspiring to be in a management role of people or a leader is communication. And that sounds like a little bit of a cliche and maybe a cop-out, but it's so important. Not just the written and not just the oral, but listening. How can you lead? How can you manage effectively if you don't understand? How do you understand? You listen. It's an art. It's not easy. I'm looking at Leah. She's heard that she's in my class. We talk about listening every single class. It's important. It's a practiced skill. The other two, emotional intelligence and empathy. The world and talent are changing today. So it's really important to have, not to be, the fluffy, lovey-dovey, but to have some empathy, to understand across the table, ask the questions. You can be an inspirational leader, you can manage well, do your job well, and have a lot of success with those key skills. They come naturally for a lot of people. Other people have to really work at them, and you can work at them, but they will prove success. And this is what companies, specifically in the tech sector, other than data, we're looking for that, right? Because we've been overtaken by computers and we've been overtaken by the lack of the human component. Those are really, really key in my view.
Thank you. Trevor?
I'm going to add on to that a little bit, just talking a little bit to emotional intelligence. Another component when you have a look at someone's ability is their ability to trust them. And that's built into the emotional intelligence element. And that when a person's communicating with them, you need to make sure that you're an authentic leader. Authentic leadership is really important when you're dealing with people. So if you're interested in engaging somebody, I look for managers that can engage somebody. And if you're wondering who a leader is, think of somebody who you want to follow, not because you have to. And it's something very different. A lot of people will follow their managers because they have to. They're put in place. You're doing what they've asked you to do. They're very transactional in how they operate. But the component that they're missing is they're not transformative. They're not building out the other things that need to happen today. They don't look at sustainable solutions. And those sustainable solutions also include people as well. So you have to look at who's motivating people, who's engaging them, who's trustworthy, who has the emotional intelligence to properly deal with people. And you also have to look for people that you're able to move up through the organization. So I look for leaders on my team and that I'm able to move. I don't want them to come in and be static in the organization. I want them to create additional value in the organization itself. So I look for people that I can develop their abilities. And those are some of the things that I look for.
Awesome.
Thank you.
JP?
So I keep commenting on things not to do, I guess. So one of the real issues within an organization is that they promote somebody because they're really good at their job. And that's it. Oh, they're really good at building this. I'm going to make them the leader of building these things. And that can just blow up quite quickly. So when you get to that opportunity in your careers, when you're looking to create a management structure or team, the words I heard, empathy, customer service, and as a leader yourself, I mean, I've always subscribed to the notion of, promote people based on merit, not based on seniority, but also start thinking about, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. And that will help elevate everybody. Put your egos in check. Make sure you're getting the job done well. make sure you're hiring people that know their stuff. But when it comes to hiring managers, don't necessarily just hire the person that was really good at that job, therefore they need to lead at that job. There's so many other components that go into making that decision.
See, the way I would look at it would be and I don't disagree with anything that's been said, is that your success in your career will be the sum of your technical skills plus your personal qualities. And so, in a lot of the personal qualities that were mentioned here, communication, emotional intelligence, those are those. But you also have to have some good technical skills, particularly early in your career. And what I always encourage people to do is to, particularly when you're starting out, I mean, a lot of people look to the big organizations to find employment because they think there's lots of opportunity there. So they look at Bell and others, and I don't mean to be critical of any big companies. But I think your greatest opportunity is with smaller companies because you will be able to build those generalist skills. And I think generalist skills, to have an understanding of HR, finance, operations, everything, learn the nuts and bolts of running a business will prove extremely valuable to you. Plus, it will also help you decide, because I'm sure none of you right now really know what you want to do in your career. So the more types of roles you're exposed to, you'll start to solidify over the next 5, 10, maybe even 20 years before you figure out actually what you want to do. So in addition to working for smaller companies, I try to encourage people to work in smaller communities, rural areas, because frankly, a lot of people are leaving rural areas to move to the city, kind of for obvious reasons, but it means a lot of the employers in the rural communities have a difficult time attracting people. So I know, like Sarah Napier, for example, she's the CEO of the United Way, and she's a graduate of the Mount, I think, in public relations, and she actually started her career, I think, working for a municipality, I believe it was in Lunenburg, if I'm not mistaken. And she worked there for 5 years. She said, I gained experience there that I would never have gained in the city. And that just jump-started her career. And, still at a relatively young age, she's the CEO of a very large not-for-profit organization. So and big companies also, I don't mean to drone on too long, don't forget, are looking at cutting costs in most cases. And the area where they look to cut costs is human costs, labor costs, principally. So your greatest job security is not working for a big company. Your greatest job security is having lots of skills, lots of contacts, lots of relationships, and the confidence that if you do lose your job for whatever reason, you can find another one fairly quickly.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm going to start question 6. So this one is, many students struggle to decide what career to pursue. And as we've talked about, it can be quite circuitous. So what advice do you have for a young person who at this point can't decide on a career? So I'm actually going to start with JP as someone from the Mount not that long ago. So what advice would you give someone who hasn't figured it out yet?
Yeah, well, if you got to figure it out, put your hand up, because I doubt that you do.
How many? Good question. How many people have it figured out?
Okay, yes.
What do you want to do in
Professor
life?
in the back. All right, that's good. That's
How many
good.
people don't have it
That's
figured out
good.
just yet?
No, I mean, and that's great. It's kind of like shoveling your driveway, right? You just stay at the top of it. You can start on any path, and that will eventually take you to another path and to another path and another path. So, okay, first of all, like, don't stress about it. There's plenty of time to figure out. Second of all, I would say take risks, small calculated risks. Don't be too prescribed in exactly what you want to do. And, organizations are always looking for young, employable individuals. So if you take a risk and it doesn't feel like the right path, then switch. I have a friend who graduated from the Mount the same year I did. He went into construction afterwards, and after that, now he's been with the federal government for 15 years. But he took the first 5 years to just kind of figure out exactly what he wanted to do. And I remember looking at him like, you're nuts. Like, you're not getting started yet. But he was very particular about what he wanted to do and took his time. So you can do that. You can also take risks. But just know that even though if you think you got it quite figured out right now, it definitely might deviate a little bit.
Jerry?
I feel very strongly about this. A lot of advice that young people are given is find your passion, find something you're passionate about, which I always thought was very ridiculous career advice. Simply because at this stage you don't know what you're passionate about. Like my view, you try as many things as possible, and eventually you'll discover something that you really like doing. And it's almost like that. Is it a Venn diagram? The overlapping circles. Yeah, so you can picture like three circles that are overlap. One is what are you good at? The other circle is what are you interested in doing? And the third one is what can you make money doing as well. I mean, I often said like my interests, I can make money being a professional golfer. I'm interested in being a professional golfer, but I have no skills in being a professional. So you can't, you got to match all those three in order to be successful. But I wouldn't worry at this stage of the game, like JP said, if you haven't got it figured out, because it will eventually come to you the more things you do try. But bear in mind, you're going to work about 40 years, so roughly mid-20s to mid-60s or so. And, you want to find something that you're happy doing, because I do see a lot of people in my career, unfortunately, who are they're 45, 50 years of age. They wake up and they're really just kind of depressed in a way, and they're because they don't know what they're going to do, and they just fell into engineering or they fell into law by mistake, and they're looking ahead the next 20 years, and you don't want to find yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be fearful that you don't have it figured out today and that you don't know what you want to do forever and ever. That's just not realistic for the world today. But some advice, like key takeaways that I would take is that, and I do also teach here at the Mount, you need to network. And I think JP touched on it briefly. Networking is very, very important. It's also not costly. As students, I realize that, you don't have an endless bank account. The Mount puts on a lot of opportunities for you to come and talk to people like us. I'm not saying swarm us, but you should be swarming us and trying to talk to us and pick our brains afterwards. There's also the Learners and Leaders Conference. I'm not plugging it, but I'm being serious. When I was in university, I took advantage of all of that, and there wasn't nearly as much offered back then as there is today. That will allow you to talk to multiple different people in multiple different roles, in multiple different sectors, different fields, big, small, large, you name it. It's information, and information is powerful. You never know what's going to come across. You may come across JP. He might sit down with you for an hour and say, "Hey, come in January. I've got an opening. I think you've got the skills." That I've done that. That's happened. So you need to focus on your studies, but you need to at the same time be focusing on networking for when you're ready to hit that trigger. And that path, that trigger that you might start out once you graduate is not going to be the path that you end up in 20 years. Maybe the same company, but different roles. But that's a really, 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 really key thing to remember to do. To network, don't be scared to ask. You should be talking to people like us. Take advantage of those opportunities. Go to the career fairs, see what companies are doing. It's not going to fall in your lap. That doesn't happen. You do have to be active and engaged in the market.
I'm going to kind of lead into question 7 here too with Trevor. And so that is, because if you haven't figured it out, question 7 is going to get, what opportunities, paid or otherwise, would you strongly recommend students look into outside the classroom? Because some of these may turn into, I had no idea that would be that fun. I might like to pursue that as a career. What advice would you give for those kind of opportunities?
Internships are a really effective way for you to test the organization. I know we have a number of them posted every single fall, and we also have another set posted in the spring as well. It's a really good place to experiment. And I heard it mentioned a few times, find a volunteer board that you're interested in. Often you'll find contacts in there that can help leverage finding you a position, and it's really effective. So, but find something you're interested in as well. You want to make sure when you're there, you're engaged, because you want to make sure that that shows and comes across to the people that are on that board. And there's a number of boards out there. So there's health-related boards, there's finance boards. Find the one that interests you the most. So one of the boards that I'm part of is internal to my own organization, and it helps manage the finance component. So it brings me in contact with a lot of different people and has opened up opportunities as I move forward within the organization. So that would be my suggestion.
Stephanie?
There's a few things. And I swear I didn't talk to my brother before this, to JP, but customer service, really, if you're not, if you don't really know where you want to go, or you don't have an idea yet, go for jobs that, first of all, that nobody else wants, because you will kind of shine through if you do a good job at those difficult jobs. And customer service will serve you for the rest of your career with patience, compassion, and expectations of others.
Does anyone want to add other things to those outside opportunities to look for?
Yeah, so I don't, again, a different point of view. I'd say just continue to do something that actually has nothing to do with work or nothing to do with school. If you have an interest, whether you like to walk dogs for seniors or whether you like to go to craft markets and do funky things there, like, just continue to do that, because I've been working for 20 years and I'm kind of like, I don't really have, I used to really like doing this, or I used to really like doing that, and then I didn't, because you get caught up in your career and you're moving and you're doing all these things. I think when we talk about, I'm sure it's heard and discussed here, you talk about mental health in school, mental health in the workplace, creating that balance. I don't want to be too namaste about it, but it is important that you actually do find that balance in your life. Because work's cool, it's important, it meets some of the necessities, but it's extremely important if whatever you're doing now, because I'd assume you're all not working full time, maybe it's just school, maybe that is your passion, to be a continuing learner as well. But just don't lose whatever else you have going on because you're so career focused.
The only briefly, Sean, I think a lot of people, if you could broadly group people into two groups, those who focus on others and those who focus on themselves. And if you focus on others, opportunities will come and benefit you. And like in our organization, we say in our strategic plan, as an illustration of it, to be a force for good in the community is part of our purpose, our mission. So we do a lot of community-based work, and there's wonderful opportunities to grow the skills, get away from work as well, as JP said, but also meet people. And I could think of many organizations that could use your expertise. And I believe it's okay to be very conscious of the boards or the organizations that you're thinking of joining, to try to build a plan in place to meet those people so you could perhaps benefit down the road yourself. But primary focus is on other people.
Yeah. Okay. I'll add in there too. Don't, like you talk about boards, but just volunteer organizations. Feed Nova Scotia. If you played sports, if you've been out of it for a few years, go back and see if there's a midget or a bantam team or some, rec or competitive group that wants you to help be an assistant coach. Get your foot in the door. Ask questions when you go to church. Ask your the folks who are volunteering with you. What do you do? Is that interesting? What do you do on the side? Ask your sport coaches what they do for a job. So question 8. How can, and these last 3 questions kind of tie in together. How can university students best prepare themselves for success in today's business world if they want to pursue a career in management or HR, given that both deal with people, and one is obviously HR is easier to get into because there's entry-level positions, but management is something you have to earn and get into. So how do you kind of map out that pathway if you decide you want to be leading people? I'll start with Trevor.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes. It happens. Don't be worried about it. One of the things that's built into the department that I'm in within the organization is experimentation. And making those mistakes are some of the best opportunities you're going to find to grow personally. Where everyone here is enrolled in school, I would suggest stay very diligent in what you're doing. You're not just building up those academia elements in your life by rote memorization, writing tests. You're building up organizational skills, and that'll help prepare you in the business world, because the deadlines are going to be the same. The expectations might be greater. So these skills that you're building currently today are not just related to human resources abilities, but it's organizational skills in there as well. And one other thing that I wanted to mention is you're going to have people that are positive forces in your life. You're going to have people that are not positive forces in your life. So ignore the naysayers. Keep moving forward with the path that you're moving on. It's important, and make sure you keep that toxicity level out and away from your life. And because those things can discourage you from where you're moving, And you want to especially keep it away because organizations now, I notice, aren't tolerant where they used to be a decade ago with toxicity in the workplace. So you want to keep that very positive acumen when coming into work. It does help a lot. Thank you.
Jerry, I'll go to you next because you deal mainly with management and senior positions.
Yeah, I would say quickly, do a good job at what you do. Promote your good work, but do it in a modest way. You don't want to sound like a braggart, but people have to know what you're doing if you're doing a good job. I would say treat others with respect and dignity at all times. Act with kindness toward other people, and I think good things will happen.
Leanne?
Most of the things have been said, but in human resources specifically and management, we touched on it earlier. Be yourself. Be authentic. Don't try to fudge it and fake it till you make it. I mean, that's used in sometimes, but be yourself and don't be afraid to fail, as you had noted. No one is perfect. No business is perfect. Mistakes will happen. You will learn from that. You will be better, if that's in human resources or if that's in management in general. And I'll go back and I'll plug what I had said earlier about empathy and communications in the HR field. Those are at the core. Human resources has changed. You can speak to this, Jerry, because you've been around a lot longer than me. Well, no, I don't mean that in a negative way. But it has changed. It is not your typical paper pushing role anymore. It is a strategic partner. And for human resources, the companies that get that have it at the level, at the high level, connected to the CEO, the executive level, those are the companies that value people and see, that's where you can really hone in and grow your skills. So, yeah, I think that's it.
Stephanie?
My advice at this point in your careers when you start out would be to always be open to feedback. So when you're getting information on your performance and that sort of thing, take it in and act on it so that you can make those improvements. And if you're not getting feedback, which can happen in organizations, ask for it. So see how you were doing, because you don't want to find out, so far into a position that you're not quite getting something. And really take initiative to change it and use the feedback.
JP?
Yeah, I actually, that's a good point, Steph. The feedback is it's never punitive at all. It's taken punitively, and it's really not. I'd like to answer this question a little bit differently, what the university can do to help prepare. If I was to teach a university course, which I highly doubt I ever get invited to do, I would teach a course called "Now This Is What Really Happens," because you need to expect the unexpected in the real world. There is stuff that it's not taught in the classroom setting. So you just need to be prepared for many WTF moments in your life, especially managing people, especially in HR, because I think all of us up here could tell you some stories that you'd be scratching your head around people, around interactions, around, these guys are all smiling, and I got 10.
No day's the same.
No day's the same. So just be prepared for anything, but be nimble enough to be able to adapt to ongoing change. The biggest challenges I have with, whether it's management, employees, whatever, those that are not able to change quickly are those that they get left behind. So I would start to think about that as you move into your career.
Thank you very much. It's funny, no one asked me if I would ask myself a question, but anyway. But on feedback, that was so important. Students will never come up to me at the end of a class and say, so that assignment I got back, what was it I really did well? What were my strengths in creating that assignment? It's always, where did I lose marks? And you always start with the negative. Feedback is constructive, and please take it that way. The other thing is you could be a leader and a manager right now in your class projects. Take the reins of that group. Because I tell you, if you demonstrate that to your professors, and I write at least 3 or 4 reference letters a year for students, who've graduated, and I have kind of three approaches. One is, no, I'm not writing a letter for you. You do not want my letter. The other is, yeah, you were okay. I'll write you that generic letter that I pretty much write for everybody. And then there's the, wow, you really stood out. And I'm going to make sure I write a 2-page letter that tells that employer how amazing you are. And if you want that letter, you have to stand out in the classroom. Thank you guys. That was really, really great. So now it's your turn. Wait, clap, applause. So I mentioned Jerry's book at the beginning. So it's Pinnacle, How to Land the Right Job and Find Fulfillment in Your Career. This is where you could earn one of these. I see a hand going up already. So you got to ask awesome questions if you want this. So if you're ready, I've got 2 hands now. So I'll start. Oh, more hands. Awesome. So I'll start here. Oh, because we're recording.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean. I also was in your class, so thanks for that. My question is about the hiring process. And in our virtual connected world and our job industry, do you view social media presence in the hiring process? And can this be a deterrent for new hires?
Social media? Who wants to take that one?
I will. Yeah, I tell my kids all the time, like, your media, your footprint online, just, I mean, they're young, they don't have much of one. Just be extremely careful. I mean, because people, we will look it up. We'll go to LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Whether or not somebody says they do it, they do it. They're looking to see what's going on. So, yeah, I don't know if anybody disagrees, but I'm pretty sure we all do it.
Yeah, we many of you would have seen in the recent federal election, a number of candidates ended up getting kind of either criticized or taken off the ticket because of social media comments they made many years earlier. So there's a part in the book there about cleaning up your digital dirt, and in employers check. I mean, some of them don't do. They'll Google you and so on and look on, social, Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, a few of those places. But so definitely clean it up. On the positive side, I mean, you should be very active in social media, particularly LinkedIn, I would say. Like all of you should have a profile written up now, connect with various groups and engage that way. And bearing in mind that tools like LinkedIn and Twitter, let's say LinkedIn specifically, you must be a contributor, not a taker. Like you can't go around looking for a job. You got to be part of that community and sort of write posts and comment and so on and build your presence that way.
Anyone else on social media?
I would make sure that you double check that if you think something is not public, it probably is, and there may be another way that people can find information out. So if you have a profile that you believe is private, if it's on a public domain, it's likely public. That's the advice I'll give you, because people look.
Well, people can always screen grab it, who are friends, and connect it to your private one and share it publicly. Anyway, I have my stepbrother's 27, and he actually has on his Facebook page an alias. So all of his friends know who he is, but if an employer's looking for him, they'll never find him. And that's where he posts the stuff, that he goes to parties and does all that kind of stuff. So that one's Toby Ali. But just be aware that, as JP said, employers do look at it. And I've seen surveys where 80 and 90% of employers are checking you before they hire you online. And if you don't exist online, that's also a red flag. So have that professional, that'd be my advice, professional outlook on your social media. Another question. We had it right here. Second one. So
my name is Lisa. First of all, I'd like to thank you all. You are like the real MVPs up here. And then is it JP? Yeah, you're the manager that I would like to have.
Okay, cool.
But I think Gerard was touching. I think Gerard, you all kind of touched base on this kind of way you go. I am this person where I'm probably twice the age of everybody in here, and it took me a while to get here. So I feel with me, the cart is before the horse, and I do have kids. So what advice would you give? I am in public relations, but I'm listening to the HR. I am a people person, and then usually in my work where I work with a contracting company, sometimes they'll allow me to go in and meet the clients just to kind of break the ice if they're nervous. I'm the firecracker that they say they throw in. So for someone like me, and now I'm in PR, but I'm listening to the HR, what advice would you give for someone like me? Oh.
What, can you just tell me briefly, so were you out of the workforce for a number of years and you've come back to go to school
Yeah.
and, and so on,
Play that up.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's an asset. I think some people view these as liabilities, but I think if you flip them around and, I mean, that does stand out. I don't know what your early story was, why you weren't, you didn't go when you're 18 or 20, it doesn't really matter. But, essentially a lot of people in the room here are very privileged to attend a university. I mean, think about the number of people in the world who don't have this privilege to borrow the money and attend a university. We're very, very privileged people, and but I would say, that says a lot about you and your person, and you would have built a lot of skills. If you're raising family or doing other things, and I would play up those skills, and I think I think you would all agree here that that's an asset, not a liability, and speak to that. Don't conceal it.
Okay, thank you.
PR has an overlap with HR because, and often, and I'm sure you will all agree, we're managing situations, and in PR you wear multiple hats multiple times. You're pivoting. You're thinking quick on your feet. You need to in that industry. So there is a crossover there. So use that to your ability. And don't be afraid to look at an organization and call JP and look at an opportunity for an internship or whatnot. Go in and shadow him and be a pain in his side, but don't use that. I mean, you're recognizing that right now.
Can I be your shadow?
You're recognizing that you enjoy that by hearing us talk,
Yes.
and you've already experienced a piece of life, and you're back, and this is your next chapter. So you should definitely play that up and use
people shouldn't forget that HR needs PR, HR needs marketing. So when you think of a company, when you're recruiting people, that's like you selling your product. You're selling your jobs, because especially, and Trevor could speak to this with a really large company, when you have thousands, tens of thousands of employees, even if you only have 2, 3, 4% turnover, that means hundreds of people a month that you're hiring. And you got to sell like crazy your company to get the right people to work for you.
That drives in a lot of expense into the organization, so having the right leaders in place is critical. And that sales component has to exist with your leaders that are there today. They have to sell themselves to you, individual, because something that seems to be happening in organizations today is ghosting. You'll have employees that'll, see, get some laughing on that one. You'll hire an employee. I personally haven't had it happen, but you'll hire an employee, and depending on the leader, that employee may or may not be there the next day or the day after. It's hard to tell if they're sick, if they're in and out of the organization, if they're working from home. So you have a lot of challenges, so that element exists elsewhere.
Do we have time for one? We have one quick one? One quick, like 1 minute. Come on, Miriam, work with me. I know, eh?
Well, for starters, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and coming and speaking with us. I really appreciate it. I think when I first started my bachelor's, I thought that your bachelor's degree is a destination. It's something you finish and that's your accomplishment, but I'm quickly realizing that we have to continue to further our education, further our experience, and adapt. And I was wondering how you guys determine what's the next step, whether it's taking a master's degree, whether it's volunteering, looking for positions. How do you navigate that so you're setting yourself up for success, not just in your current role, but your future roles that you want to obtain?
So I have a soapbox about MBAs. Did you say? No. I don't think you should go from a bachelor to an MBA, especially if you're doing a bachelor of business, bachelor of tourism. I think you need to go out, get the work experience, figure out exactly where you might want to focus specifically around the MBA. I know it might be blasphemous for a number of people in the room, but that's what I look for. I've got a whole rant about I don't care if you have an MBA. I look for all these other skills that we talked about today. The customer service, the empathy, the transferable skills. So that is my completely biased answer to your question about that path. I'd say get out and get some work experience.
I'm going to add to that, and my dad had a similar mindset as JP. I was the student that excelled in school, and I wanted to do my master's MBA right away. And he was like, "No, experience is more important than that. And if you want to get it down the road, you can get it." And I am so grateful that I worked for 9 years before I went back and did that. I worked while doing my MBA and did it executive style. It was hard. It was a lot of work, but it was well worth it. You want to get that experience. And I said earlier, do not discredit the opportunity to work with volunteer organizations, whether it is within a board or just volunteering in general. Every bit of experience that you get will only make you a stronger candidate within your MBA or your master's program. You'll have more to contribute, more fulsome discussions, and you'll look more appealing to an employer.
I can tell you, a lot of us have MBAs, and when you're in your MBA class, especially if you have very little experience like I did, and then there's a guy who's got 20 years in the Navy in the same class, and most of the conversations were, "Oh, I knew what that was. I just didn't have the terminology to put around that situation." Whereas I was looking and going, "I've never heard of that before." And so experience is huge. So we had 3 questions. They were all awesome. Come up and get your book. You'll want to go down and see Miriam at the end. Get your stamp down that way. Thank you, guys. Big
Thank
round
you.
of applause for our panel.